Well, of course, as we get older, our bones become more brittle, but those who make an effort to help strengthen their bones may be putting themselves at risk for a heart attack. A new study revealing calcium supplements come with some potentially serious side effects. Here to tell us more is natural health care expert Mark Mincolla. And Mark, the study we're talking about here was published by the British Medical Journal. Explain to us what the key findings were.
Well, a team of researchers, Gene, from the United States, Britain, and New Zealand established, after looking at 11 studies, 12,000 subjects, that those folks who take 500 milligrams a day of calcium have a 31% higher risk of suffering a heart attack.
So breaking it down, what does it all mean, essentially?
Well, here's really what it means. First of all, we tend to think that only blood fats block the arteries. Not true. Calcium does the same thing. It's all a question of how absorbable that calcium is. So if you're taking an unabsorbable form of calcium, and again, they range between 25 and 95% absorbable. So the chelates are the most available, absorbable, 80% absorbable, easy to find over the counter. Most folks don't know the difference. They price the calciums out, they buy the cheapest stuff. Be careful of that. Get the chelates, the more expensive, more absorbable. Also, the study didn't even look at vitamin D3 at all. And studies have clearly indicated that D3 plus calcium is safe and effective.
For those who may be taking the supplements and then go into a little bit of a panic when they hear this, what are other ways that they can supplement their calcium?
Well, a number of these authors and these researchers said, hey, you know what, let's not overlook food here. Food's a really important part of this equation. There are foods that are high in magnesium, that are very alkalizing, that are rich in enzymes, and that are low in protein that make that calcium really absorbable from those foods. Things like dried fruits, nuts and seeds, and beans and greens.
We've always been told that dairy is one of the greatest sources of calcium, but I think from what I've read, from what you've written about it, you don't necessarily concur with that assessment.
Well, you know, I think there's mixed reviews here. If we look at the Harvard nurses study, Gene, 72,000 women followed over 18 years. Those women who consumed the highest amount of dairy products had the highest rate of bone fractures. So, you know, the jury's out on it. And again, we know that the greens, the beans, the nuts and seeds, the dried fruits produce a tremendous form of absorbable calcium because of their alkalization. Will
the vitamin D you talked about, if you're getting it through sunlight, and maybe you're taking some vitamin D supplements, will that help as well? Because you mentioned vitamin D is a good way to help that.
Yeah, I think there's two things here. I think absolutely take the vitamin D supplements if there's any question. Again, there's a number of different supplements that are out there that are sort of complexes that have calcium and D3 in them. Theoretically, a good calcium should have D3 in there with it. Also, vitamin K2 is something that folks really need to pay attention to. A lot of great studies recently about the importance of vitamin K2 at making sure that calcium isn't left to deposit in the bloodstream, but is actually directed to those bones. So vitamin K2 is an also important factor.
All right, advice time. Someone out there with osteoporosis, now they're at risk for a heart attack because of the study we've learned. What do they need to do next?
Well, number one, you want to talk to your physician. Okay. Number two, you want to think in terms of an absorbable calcium. As we said, calcium chelate, C-H-E-L-A-T-E, very absorbable, 80% absorbable, over the counter, inexpensive, readily available. That's number one, absorbable calcium. Number two, food. We talked about food. The greens are so important. The beans are so important. And the idea of nuts and seeds and dried fruits, really important. Those are the most absorbable food factors. And vitamin D3, you can't do without it. Make sure that your calcium has D3 in there with it.
And if you're heading down this path and you haven't been taking the calcium supplements, there is a way to go ahead and do it without worrying about taking those.
There absolutely is. And I think if you look at the research, it clearly indicates that.
All right. For more information, you can visit maxhealth.com. That's Mark's website.